Hello, I am Blaze, and welcome back to Warframe. And at last, we are at the end of the Syndicate melee weapons. They have actually been mostly good, even though I have had my share of complaints. But I'm afraid that the last weapon I'm going over is also by all means the least. This is the Synoid Heliocor. As with its other sibling melee weapons, you will need to either achieve the rank of Genius with Cephalon Suda and then purchase the weapon for 125,000 standing, or head over to Warframe's trading community to buy it from another player. In either case, you will need to be at Mastery rank 8, and you will need to provide your own catalyst and weapon slot if you want those installed. The Synoid Heliocor breaks from the model of all the previous Syndicate melee weapons and shuffles around basically all of the default Heliocor's stats, and not really for the better. Its base damage has been reduced by 20 points to 120, spread between 102 impact, 12 puncture, and 6 slash damage. It has also had its critical chance reduced to 10% compared to the original Heliocor's 25%, meaning that it is absolutely not a crit weapon anymore. Though it does keep its 2.0 times critical damage multiplier for whatever that's worth. It has had a number of stat increases as well, however. Its status chance was increased to 20%, it has a faster animation speed modifier at 1.08 attack speed, and reveals itself as that new archetype Digital Extremes has been experimenting with lately by featuring a boosted 1.8 times channeling damage multiplier, though it will still cost 5 energy per channeled strike as usual. It does not feature any added mod polarities by default sadly, but its stance slot does match Crushing Ruin by default. So let's go over the Synoid Heliocor's unique abilities real quick. Like the standard Heliocor before it, enemies killed by a strike from the Synoid Heliocor will automatically be scanned for your codex. This won't give any standing with Samaris unfortunately, for that you still need to actually use the synthesis scanner, but it does help to passively fill out your codex if you're missing anything, and can be a way to farm for Kavat DNA samples if you don't want to try using the synthesis scanner for a chance at a double rescan instead. For its actual unique ability, yet more focus is placed on melee channeling. With the exception of Xmas units, for some reason, any other enemy killed with a channeling strike will be resummoned as a friendly Spectre for 30 seconds, identifiable by the shimmering energy color around it. The ability offers very limited usefulness though, as the Spectres do not provide much damage, don't serve as much of a distraction for the enemies, and they maintain the same AI as their non-friendly counterpart. So, for any ranged Spectres, they tend to waste a bunch of time running into cover and being useless, which is especially annoying given their limited lifespan. Instead of actually running in and trying to make themselves useful, they tend to just waste your time. So, if you do want to make use of them, I recommend targeting something with a passive aura or a heavy unit that doesn't care about seeking cover. If they had adjusted AI so that they were made much more aggressive, then maybe they'd be more convincing, but that isn't a thing right now. You can buff the Summon Spectre with one of the buff augments like Fireball Frenzy or Smite Infusion, but aside from the occasional status proc, that still doesn't really make them very useful, and you honestly get more use by just casting something like that on your Sentinel instead. Worst of all, there's no way to overwrite the Summon Spectre with something else. So if you happen to kill the wrong enemy, then you're stuck with what you've got for the entire duration. This would have been a good opportunity to have the secondary fire button be a de-summon command, but it's not to be. And just like the Vacor Sidon, the Lasting Sting mod doesn't change the duration of the Spectre, so even if you do want it around for longer, you don't have any options to extend their short life. Speaking of the Vacor Sidon, you may remember that I criticized the Radial Blind for being tied to the second worst melee mechanic in the game. So you might be asking, hey Blaze, what's the worst melee mechanic? Channeling is the worst melee mechanic. They tried to make it more interesting with the Synoid Heliocor Spectre summoning, but even if the Spectres weren't a waste of time, the Synoid Heliocor still runs straight into the problem of channeling being a deeply flawed mechanic that has a cost-to-benefit ratio that is completely fucked. The minutiae of channeling's shortcomings can make an entire video unto itself, but here's a summary. Everything you do, particularly when it comes to mods, also has associated costs. Every mod has the cost of both mod capacity and the mod slot itself. After all, if you use one mod, that means it's a space that can't be used by another mod. Channeling mods though have a shitload of costs. Let's go over them. 1. The mod slot they're installed in. 2. The mod capacity cost. 3. The typically significant reduction in channeling efficiency. 4. Only working while in melee mode and while channeling, as opposed to just being active all the time like most other mods. 5. The benefits they provide are pretty much all worse than a standard non-channeling, non-drawback mod counterpart. And 6. Channeling strikes eat your energy reserves, which would be better used on your Warframe powers to actually do something useful. The only channeling mod worth using is Life Strike, because being able to restore your Warframe's health is actually a pretty big deal. So Life Strike gets a pass from me. As for channeling efficiency itself, by default every single hit on each individual enemy will take away 5 energy. This adds up. Really, really fucking fast. And all for, what, a 1.5 times damage multiplier on most weapons, or a minutely better 1.8 damage multiplier on a weapon like the Synoid Heliocor that's actually supposed to be a channeling weapon. And as you add mods to try to take advantage of channeling, that cost can skyrocket. And the sad thing is, channeling is so anemic right now that even on a weapon supposedly built to take advantage of it, it's still inferior to pretty much every other option. Here is a side-by-side comparison of the Synoid Heliocor with the channeling build that it was probably meant to take advantage of, compared to just using body count and blood rush with a berserker for a critical build that it doesn't even really have the stats to work for properly. And yet, the suboptimal critical build still wins. That's pathetic. So, with that in mind, here is my recommendation in building for the Synoid Heliocor. Don't build for the Synoid Heliocor. Just use the normal Heliocor instead, please. Channeling is bad. The Spectres are bad. It's a bad status weapon too. Hammer animations are too slow to lay down status procs unless it could easily reach 100% status chance, which this thing can't, and the Synoid Heliocor has a damage split between the 3 physical damage types to dilute the status effects you would want to actually happen. None of the Synoid Heliocor works, and that's kind of weird when you consider that Cephalon Suda has previously brought us the Synoid Gammacore, a weapon that had its ammo efficiency nerfed heavily because it basically dominated the choice as a secondary completely after the Gammacore buffs, and the Synoid Simulor, which remains the weapon of choice for throwing out a lot of balls and blowing up everything in the immediate vicinity. And it's also strange considering that this is the same update that gave us the fucking Telos Boltus, which now only produces shockwaves when in dedicated melee mode, which is something, but damn. My final verdict. The Synoid Heliocor is an interesting idea, but the execution as a functional weapon just isn't there in any capacity. Not recommended. Like, at all. Thank you for watching my look at the Synoid Heliocor. All comments are appreciated, and I hope to see you around next time. For more Warframe content, feel free to give a click over to one of my other videos on the significantly better Syndicate melee weapons, such as the Vacor Sidearm, Sancti Magistar, or Secure Electa. And as always, good luck, have fun, and take care.